Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
All right, I'm gonna switch over so you can see the babies.
Oh
Oh
no,
my
so
gosh.
cute. What are those?
They're Siberian Huskies, but they're
Wow.
only 10 days old.
Are they sleeping?
Yeah, they just ate,
That's
so they're
amazing.
very tired. This
Oh,
is the one that I'm keeping.
Oh, he's got white socks. So
Yep,
cute. Oh my
and little white
goodness.
blaze on his nose.
oh my gosh.
At that age, like most puppies kind of look the same.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't be able to tell those are huskies. I don't
Right.
think. So cute.
Nicole, thanks so much for making the time. I know you're super, super busy. Uh, so great to finally meet you on video. I'm Chinwe. I'm one of the co-founders of PocketSuite.
Thank you for your patience.
Not at all.
Hey Nicole, I'm Sean. I'm the community manager. Thank you very much. We are really looking forward to speaking with you today.
Well, thank you, and glad to finally meet you guys virtually.
So Nicole, can you talk to us about what you do and how you got started?
Sure. I am running a dog training business. I've done probably about 5 years now. Um, I did it kind of as a side business for about 20 years because I used to be in corporate sales, working for companies like AT&T and Granger. And then I decided that I had enough of the corporate world, and I was always good with dogs and I love dogs. And I figured I would try to branch out and start my own company. I've always kind of wanted to have my own business, be my own boss, and just create a company that was, friendly and, hardworking, didn't depend on corporate politics to get ahead and to promote yourself. So,
Okay.
so hence why I started my own company. So it's been about 5 years now. I just hired 3 new trainers. So I'm up to 9 trainers now.
Wow.
So I'm trying to do less and less of the training part and more of the business aspect, promotion, marketing, sales, and then eventually franchising.
So it's funny, you're not the first pro that we've talked to that left corporate, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
becoming a trend now. We like to say if you ask 9 out of 10 people if they, in corporate, if they'd want to work for themselves, they'll say hell yes. And but most people don't really know kind of what's the path, like how do I go
Right.
about doing that? So I'm really curious about the journey of I I've had enough and I'm gonna do it. Did you consult with like family and friends about this, and like how supportive was your ecosystem around this next step for you?
Some were very incredibly supportive, and others, questioned, like, are you insane? You're giving up a 6-figure salary to do what? Yeah. So yeah, I got the whole gamut of, yes, we're behind you 100%, to you're crazy, you're never gonna make it. But at the end of the day, they were going to do anything they could to help me, which, that part I really did appreciate, even if they thought I was crazy.
Well, just double clicking on that for a minute, because I think a lot of folks, that actually could be the end of the story for them. They're just like,
Mm-hmm.
you're right, I'll just stay in corporate. How did you push through? What advice would you give to others to push through just kind of some of the noise that you get when you're making that kind of transition?
Yeah, absolutely. One is you really have to have the fortitude and the passion to do something, and then the patience and persistence, and in my case, stubbornness, to continue through no matter what the odds. If you really have a passion for it and it's something that you want to make sure that you can give absolutely everything to, then you have to go for it, because if it's that much of a drive within you, how can you not?
Yeah.
It does take a lot of dedication. I had literally no life for the first 3.5 years, because
Yep.
my entire life was a business, getting it up and running, trying to make money, hustling like crazy, pounding the pavement, doing everything that I learned from the corporate world and trying to apply it to an individual business.
Yep.
where I'm the only person. So
Right.
I'm the only one that I can depend on. That was a little scary.
So we've heard this as well. This is sort of one of the other kind of what they call the valley of death, right? Of like,
Mhm.
gosh, I'm not making any money. It's just me. I'm exhausted. How do you define success during that early period? Because it's not about, like, it's money
It's
is
not
not the
money.
thing, right? It's not
No.
this. So what is for you success during that period? What do people focus on to feel like it's worth it?
For me, it was about creating the right relationship between an owner and their dog. I was all about trying to promote the right type of relationship, because there are too many people out there who get a dog for the wrong reasons, don't invest in their animal and you know what the commitment that they've made, and then next thing you know, that animal's in a shelter, and then a couple months later they're being euthanized. So to me, that was just there. It was so easily fixed with just a little bit of training. So that's, to me, if I could get one less animal turned into a shelter, I felt like I was making at least a minimal impact.
Wow.
And then if I could get them to really enjoy their dog and the relationship they had with that animal, that was, to me, the ultimate level of an impact that I wanted to try and make. So that in the early days was what I was measuring myself against. I mean, the money, of course, once it started to roll in, yes, it was very helpful. I was doing like 2 and 3 different jobs, plus trying to get the business off the ground. So I was literally stretched thin, but, you know, I had to do what I needed to do to pay the bills and then still pursue, you know, my passion. So, you know, like I said, for the first 3 to 4 years, it was all hustle and no personal time.
Okay, I got to double back on this, right? And I want to ask you both, because I've never worked in corporate. So
Mhm.
from an outsider's perspective, it's, look, you have money, stability, there's a ladder, there's a path, you're on it, you know what you're dealing with. Certainly when you go it on your own, you're not getting more time, you're not getting more money. What it sounds to me is like you're now in control of your destiny. Like you're the only
Yes.
one to blame and you're the only one to profit.
Mhm.
What is the tipping point between, like, look, I got to be my own boss and I'm willing to face, you know, the fact that I may fail and I may have no money and I may have to start from scratch. Like, is it just such a love of, like, dogs in your case that you couldn't imagine doing anything else? Or is there something that I'm missing?
It was more than that. I mean, yes, it's the reason why I chose that particular avenue to go down. But in being in the corporate world, being a minority and being a woman, and working mostly in a male-dominated industry, because, you know, telecommunications, although now it's gotten a lot more equal, and then working at Granger, which is MRO, maintenance, repair, and operation, which really was about 90% male-dominated, it was very difficult to navigate through the politics and the um, uh, the not the prejudice, but there was a lot to overcome and a lot of barriers to overcome in that world. And I got tired of trying to always prove myself better than everybody else, and not just better than, you know, the top person. It's just like, you got to be better than all the women, you got to be better than all the men, and you're still not treated equally. And it got very frustrating. There was no real career opportunity beyond a certain point in that corporate world without really giving up your entire life, and I wasn't willing to do that.
Do you think it's
And
still like that? Like, is it still the same situation, do you think?
it was like that when I left, and I only left about 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would echo that. I same experience in corporate. I think there's a likability factor that goes beyond just kind of being your authentic self, right? You have to kind of cater to whoever is in charge at a level where you start to feel like you're losing a part of yourself. And other people are very good at doing that. They're very practical. In some cases, better at that than doing the work itself, right? So, you know, I think that's where I struggled. But let me double click on that though, Nicole, because I find that even in running a business, you
Mhm.
certainly have to build a relationship with your clients. There's got to be that likability. How would you explain to someone who hasn't been an entrepreneur the difference between that relationship cultivation as a business owner and the politics that exists in corporate? Because one might confuse them, right? Because you're still trying to build that relationship and reach out, and but it's different.
It is, because I mean, whenever I'm dealing with clients and even my own trainers, um, I I deal with them the way I would want to be handled versus what some policy handed down from, some C-level executive is telling me this is how you have to do it, whether it makes sense or not. Um, so I'm a very practical type of person. I'm very common sense oriented, but I'm also very customer focused. So there are a lot of policies that are always not customer first in the corporate world because it's all about the bottom line and the bottom dollar. And sometimes you just, in my opinion, you can't approach customers with that mindset because it just leaves a bad taste in their mouth and you lose a lot of customer loyalty. So I have a lot more flexibility coming from an entrepreneur standpoint than I ever did coming from a corporate standpoint. And I try and foster that same mentality and attitude to all of my trainers. So they have a lot of flexibility. And at the end of the day, I can't stress enough with them, customer first. Don't ever make the customer feel cheated. Don't ever do anything in the best interest of yourself. Always think of the customer first. And it's going to be hard because, you have to make money and you've got bills and everything else. So a lot of times you approach things from a very centric point of view, like self-centered, like what's in it for me? I have to make this money. And it's like, as soon as you do that, you've just lost your customer because they can sense that.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. One quick question. Is this something you came at and said, look, I feel I'm an entrepreneur. I can go out there and I can run any kind of business with the acumen and the skills I have from going up the corporate ladder and this industry. And then you took something that you were interested in or you loved and you combined them? Or is it a lifelong love of working with animals, dogs in particular? And then you said, okay, I'm going to make a business out of it. So was it a business combined with a hobby or a recreation, or just a lifelong passion that you said, this has to be my business?
It was more business combined. Like I said, I'm very practical. It was more business combined with a passion. So I knew I had the passion. I've always loved animals. I always prefer to be with my dogs than with people. But I also, from a business perspective, know that it's people who pay my bills, who have the money, who pay for the training. So you have to cultivate that relationship as well. But I know I have confidence in my business skills, in running, in my own skill set as far as sales, running a business, controlling costs. Just from being in the business world and knowing how it operates, cost of goods and things of that nature. I had calculated out a lot of that stuff prior to figuring out what avenue I wanted to take with my own business.
What else did you consider? What other businesses, or did you?
I had done some consideration with like food, like catering or opening like a restaurant, but it just, when you consider the overhead costs of all those things, and also the fact that, restaurants tend to fail fairly quickly, I didn't think it would be a viable enough business venture. A little too risky.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about your training system for dogs? How is it different, or for dog parents, how is it different? And what, when clients say, oh my gosh, you've transformed my relationship, what is it that they're talking about?
Well, I have a psychology background, so I utilize 4 quadrants of learning when I do my training. And a lot of trainers out there focus on only the 1 quadrant, which is positive only, which unfortunately is non-existent. There is no such thing as positive only, but you'll have 90% of the trainers out there saying, oh, we do positive only training. And I try and educate people. There's no such thing as positive only training, because as soon as you withhold something, you're adding a negative. As soon as you say the word no, you're adding a negative. As soon as you use any kind of pressure, whether it be leash or, you know, holding the dog, you're adding a negative. So there is no such thing as positive only training. And so I try and teach people the most effective way to train a dog, or any animal really, is to use all 4 quadrants, both positive and negative, for both reinforcement as well as punishment. And those are scientific terms. Punishment meaning just removing something, and reinforcement meaning increasing something or adding something. And so we use both positive and negative to either increase a behavior or decrease a behavior. And the way we do that is we add something or we take something away. And that's really what it comes down to. And then, of course, that's a very simplistic and basic explanation. There are millions of nuances in between all of that that we go over as we do the actual training. But that's at a very basic level. That's what it boils down to.
And do you specialize in puppies or?
Oh, no, we do it all.
Everything.
We do everything from 8-week-old puppies to the oldest dog I ever trained was 14 years old.
Wow.
A lot of unlearning there.
Yes, it took a lot of unlearning. I had him for 3 weeks. He was a biter. He was, he would like to pee and poop everywhere. So I had to potty train this 14-year-old dog. And I had to teach it not to bite. And then teach it all the basics when it was being stubborn as anything. So there was a lot of learned patterned behavior I had to break through before I could reset new patterned behavior.
Sounds like a cranky senior citizen dog.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. But he was a good boy at the end.
Yeah, at the end of it, right? So here's my next question. So, you know, just following trends during COVID and everything, and there's this huge resurgence in people getting dogs, people wanting companionship, people needing emotional support. So I guess everybody's noticed this trend. Would you say now is a good time to get into your industry? Or do you think, look, don't just hop into this industry. If you don't love it 100%, you won't be able to do it. Like,
it is an incredibly hard industry to be in. It's very easy to start a business because there's no real legislation, unfortunately. And so you have a lot of people out there who are not really qualified to train dogs, and they're messing them up, and the owners. But if you do it right, it is incredibly hard work. And that's what I tell all of my trainers that I hire. I'm like, first you have to love dogs, because there's going to come a time, and I 100% guarantee to every single trainer that comes to work for me, there will come a time where you will absolutely hate your job. You will hate dogs. You will hate your job. You will call me and say, I quit because I can't take it anymore. And I tell them, I will guarantee at some point while you're working for me, you will do that. Because it is incredibly hard, because you have those days where the dog's just peeing and pooping, and you know, you're cleaning up pee and poop like 5 times a day from like 3 different dogs, and it's just a crap show, and no one wants to deal with that. But that's part of the job. It's what we have to do. It's not the glamour of the job. And you know, so I try and instill in my trainers, like, this is not an easy job. It's great, we get to play with dogs, that's all well and good, but then you have the not so great part of the job where, you know, they're being particularly stubborn, or they're trying to bite you, or they're peeing all over, or, you know, one thing or another is happening, and that's all part of the job too. But you know, it's incredibly hard. It's a lot of work.
Nicole, just to that point, you do board and trains. So like,
yes,
they're coming to you, they're staying with you. The dog parent isn't there for that period of time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How do you, I've always wondered, how do you then help them make the transition back so the dog parent can kind of grab hold of those teachings and those results, right, and maintain them?
That's why we use tools. So we have what we call an e-collar. It's an electronic collar, and it's it goes around the dog's neck. It has a tone. It's like a beeping sound, like pager noise used to make. And then it has vibration, which we use for like deaf dogs, because they can't hear the beep. And then we also have on there, it's like a little stim. It's like a pulsing sensation. So if you've ever worn like a TENS unit, if you've gone to a chiropractor or a physical therapist, it's the exact same thing. It just sends a little pulsation and it just contracts the muscle. It's enough to get the dog's attention, but it doesn't harm them or hurt them, but it's just enough to interrupt their focus and then have them refocus on you. So we utilize that as part of the training tool to teach the dog a certain pattern of behavior. So they hear the tone, they know there's a command. If they don't follow through after they already know how to do the command. So we'll spend hours working on repetitions, using traits and other positive ways to get the dog to understand what the command is. Then once they understand it and they're just being stubborn, then we start to layer in that correction, that little bit of negative, reactivity, like, okay, you're not doing what I'm asking. So now there's going to be a little bit of a consequence. It's not going to be horrific. It's just going to be annoying. Like, all right, you're going to feel this pulse until you finally just give me what I ask for. Because you know what it is, you're just being stubborn. And so because we pattern that behavior, once we hand the dog back, we teach the owner, here's what you need to do. Just hit this button here. It's a tone. The dog knows. If he doesn't listen, you hit this other button. And it's just as simple as that. 1, 2, 3. We try and make it as easy as possible when we transition it back. But we have to put the work in up front. We have to get the dog to understand if you don't do, the command after the tone, there's going to be a consequence. Right. And it's going to be very mild, but there is a consequence.
Question, moving forward, in society, I mean, during all of this lockdown and shutdown, it seems to me like a business like yours could still exist because it's you're dealing with animals. So that's a good thing. But, with technology, things are changing. Trucks may be driven, automated. AI is going to do a lot of things. But it seems to me that your job is a tangible job that could exist forever. I mean, do you look at it that way? Do you see the future as bright as it's ever been for what you do?
Yes and no, because we're still at the end of the day dealing with people, because while a lot of our business is board and trains, we still have to have the interaction with the dog's owners. Right. But there is a portion of our business that's lessons. So we bring the dog in and the owner as well. We do the lesson, we teach the dog, we teach the owner, and then we have the owner practice. So there is that interaction there. So luckily with our facility, we have enough space that we can practice that social distancing and still maintain everything safely, wearing masks and everything else, and still conduct our business. But because of COVID and all the job losses and everything else, it definitely had an impact on our business, because when people don't have the money to invest in training, that's a luxury. And it's not always something that people are willing to do until they have a steady income again.
Right. But going beyond that in society, what would ever replace human dog training? Like what I'm saying is, if our artificial intelligence phases out this and that, and we move to a highly automated future, it seems to me as long as the human race embraces canines as their companion of choice, your chosen vocation is a good one, right? Like we're always going to need dog trainers.
I would hope so. I mean, people are getting more and more intelligent. Hopefully they're not going to get any less lazy because we love lazy people, because then, they want to hire us to do the job for them.
Can you get an app to train your dog? I mean, is there something,
Well, there are a lot of free videos. We could probably come up with an app, but unfortunately, if people don't do the work, there's no app that's going to fix that. Right. You have to put the time in, and a lot of people don't have the time, nor do they want to put the time in. So that's why in some regards, yes, we have some job security because of that. But as more and more people enter into this business, it's going to take a big chunk of that.
So one more question for you, Nicole. The dog training industry is highly concentrated with solopreneurs, people who are kind of one trainer, one dog. You're very unique in that you're really kind of growing and scaling beyond kind of powered by me to powered by us. And so what was the decision point for you as it relates to deciding to say, hey, actually I want to build a larger business, something bigger than myself? And what's your vision for what you'd like to see in the future?
I always knew it was going to be more than just me, because when it was just me, I was building up, even within the first year, more business than I could just handle myself. So I always knew I was going to have at least something outside of just me. But then for it to be sustainable for myself as a business ongoing and not, be completely tired out, I knew I would have to come up with a business model where I would work smarter, not harder. So hence why I was looking at franchising opportunities. So that's ultimately the route that I chose, because it's a type of dog training that I do that can easily be trained and passed on to other trainers to build their own locations, utilizing my methods. I decided that that would probably, again, be the easiest and smartest way to propagate my business.
Excellent.
Awesome.
I have two last questions. One thing I've noticed through doing this series of interviews is people who have had white collar jobs or corporate jobs, when they become solo entrepreneurs, their vision seems much greater. So perhaps they have the confidence of knowing, hey, I held down a 6-figure job. I've been up the corporate ladder. I can do this. But they seem to look at a bigger picture and have bigger aspirations than, say, somebody who's like, look, I've been walking dogs my whole life, and maybe the next step is to become a dog trainer. So my question is, would you agree with that? I mean, is that how you look at it? You say, I've been successful here, I can take this to the very top. And the second question, if you can remember all this, you have a background in psychology. What I've always wondered is how different human and dog psychology is, because we've ultimately trained dogs, as you are, to, respond and think like us to a certain extent. And within that, what is something that you've learned from dogs, a lesson that's been taught to you?
To answer your first question, yes, I think people who have kind of been in that big corporate environment, I think would tend to gravitate towards a larger scale operation once they go solo, just because they've seen it, they know it, and they can envision something maybe not quite as big, but something definitely bigger than just a solo operation ultimately for themselves. At least for me, that was always the case. I was never going to be just a solo operation. I always knew I was going to have my own business, have people working under me, and eventually potentially go national and international. As far as the dog aspects and humans, dogs are by far easier to train than humans. They're so much less complicated. With dogs, you give them a particular stimulus or a particular set of instructions, rules, and you know how to handle them, they will just follow through. It is just very simple, easy, cut and dried. Not that you won't get your stubborn dogs, but I know how to deal with them. There's a very prescribed formula that works almost 100% of the time with dogs. With humans, not so much. Humans, it's a lot more complicated. You've got multiple layers to deal with when it comes to humans, from an emotional, socioeconomic, just all sorts of different layers when you're dealing with humans that you don't encounter when you're dealing with dogs.
Is that frontal cortex, right? Where we live in the future?
But what have you learned from the dogs? Have you learned to live in the moment? Have you learned to love unconditionally? You must have learned something from the dogs.
I've learned that I can appreciate people more, especially if they are dog lovers. Because usually people who love dogs have some really redeeming character about them. But as far as, I can't say there's like one particular thing that I've learned specifically from a dog. I just love and appreciate them, and the fact that they do love unconditionally. Except for Siberians, they are very conditional in their love.
Well,
It's
now
all
you
about
have a
them.
bunch of them. Hey, so
I think that's why I love them so much.
Right,
It's all about them. It's like, what's in it for me? Because if there's nothing in it for me, I ain't doing
That
anything
sounds
for
a
you.
lot more like humans. That sounds a lot more like humans.
Yes,
We
and I think
gravitate
that's
to
why
the
I
type
love
of
them so
dogs that
much.
reflect our personality. So
Nicole,
where can we expect, sorry to cut you off, Jim, where can we expect to see your international franchises pop up?
Anywhere where I can find someone who would want to use my methodology, probably England first, because I would love to go visit England again. And yeah, just pretty much anywhere. I mean, I would just love to hit as many countries as I can.
So anyone watching this should just contact you.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Nicole, just one thing is just the final message for the PocketSuite community.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, a final message for the PocketSuite community. Any message for?
Just pursue your dreams. Do it with dedication. Do it with passion, and do it intelligently. Do your research. Make sure you know what you're getting into, and then just give it everything you have. You know, whether you make a success of it or whether you fail, there is no real failure because you're always learning something. And you take what you've learned and make it better the next time.
For people who haven't used PocketSuite at all, any story that gives them a picture of the experience PocketSuite has helped deliver for you?
I will say it is probably the most versatile tool that I've used, and it's expanding, which I love. It allows me to do pretty much everything within one tool, which I appreciate. So as a business owner, it really is helpful to have one source to be able to handle a multitude of items without having to manage like 10 or 12 different platforms.
Thank you so much, Nicole. We're going to promote this video on social and get you up on our website. Very inspired. Can't wait to see your international locations. Happy to support you there.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
The word on the street is Chinwei might be looking for a dog.
I know. Yeah, I just have to get my husband on board. I have to get my husband on board. That's a small matter of that, but my kids would love it. My kids would love it.
Absolutely. And these dogs have the best temperaments. My last litter, half of them were trained as service dogs. Oh, man. Yeah. I flew one all the way out to Colorado Springs for a soldier.
Oh, you're kidding. All right. Well, let's hold that thought.
Right.
I've got some work to do on my end.
All right.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nicole. Have a great night. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.